When you watch a game of football, whether it be going to the game itself or watching it on TV, etc., it's always good to try and evaluate. We all do, don't we? We evaluate what the game was about and what we've learned from it, whether we've found anything new, whether we found anything encouraging, or whether we've just seen the same old, same old. And for those of you who watch the channel regularly will know I started to do these what we learned from shows before the World Cup, what we learned from whatever games have been played, 6 things we've learned or 5 things we've learned or whatever. And I'm going to pick this up again, now that the season has restarted. And obviously the first game, the Premier League return, and seeing us play against Arsenal on Boxing Day. And there's 6 things that I think we've learnt, or to be honest, we already knew. And I'm going to go through them one by one and try and give a little bit more detail if I can. So that's my alarm going off. I do apologize for that. Let's get rid of that. So the first thing we've learnt, of course, is that the game is played in 90 minutes and not just 45 minutes. And for us, it still seems to be the same way. I guess the difference is that before the World Cup, we only started playing in the second half, whereas in this game against Arsenal, we seem to play pretty decently in the first half. Look, Arsenal had the most of the possession in the first half, and they probably had the better chances, etc. But we kept them at bay. We played decently, and we went into the second half with a 1-0 lead, which was a massive bonus. But unfortunately, the game isn't won in just half a game. In 45 minutes, it's got to be played the full 90. And as we all saw, the second 45 minutes of the game against Arsenal was pretty much abysmal. We just collapsed, and I think that's the one thing that we've got to remember, is that 45 minutes isn't enough to win a game. We've got to be at it for the full 90. And it was a shame, really, because I was kind of hoping to see something different since the World Cup break. And I guess we did. We saw West Ham kind of play a little bit better in the first half, but we didn't see them play at all well in the second half. I think the second thing, again, we already knew, or most of us already knew or learnt, is that Antonio is still not a striker. Look, early in the second half, we could have made it 2-0. And perhaps if a really good striker had been wearing a West Ham shirt, he might have put the ball away. But we didn't. And it came as no surprise that Antonio fluffed his lines in front of goal again. Look, when Antonio doesn't have time to think about what he's doing and just unleashes a shot, it normally goes in the back of the net. When he has a little bit of time to think about what he needs to do or what he wants to do, that usually ends up meaning that he's going to, boot it into row Z, or he's just going to miss the target. Antonio was interviewed earlier in the week saying how unhappy he is at not starting more games this season. Well, fair play to him for wanting to fight for a starting place, and fair play to him for the effort that he put in the game against Arsenal. But huffing and puffing on the field of play in a Premier League game isn't enough, unfortunately. We need more from a striker, and he's not a natural striker. And if the stories are true that David Moyes has turned down the board's offer to find money to get another striker in January, then that fills me with deep concern, as I cannot see Antonio getting enough goals to help turn things around. Now, I'm not suggesting that a 2-0 lead over Arsenal would have still been enough to win the game. After all, they did score 3 goals to win. But despite trying to come back from a 1-0 lead being tough enough, imagine if it was a 2-0 lead and it would have been just that bit harder for Arsenal, and it might have frustrated them. Next up was the lenient referee. I thought Michael Oliver in the first half had a really, really poor game where he booked both Bowen and Soufal for what seemed like fairly innocuous challenges, yet not showing a yellow card to any of the Arsenal players for some clear fouls, which are as bad, if not worse, in some cases. They were breaking our play up, fouling, niggly fouls, breaking our momentum, whatever there was of it, but they still went unpunished. Now, there was, of course, the penalty which didn't get a booking, and one particular 2-footed foul on Paqueta, which was clearly a yellow card, but again didn't get penalised. But Oliver didn't see fit to show any Arsenal players any yellow cards throughout the game itself. Now, with no Arsenal players coming back onto the field in the second half, it meant that they can go about their game fairly freely in the second half, whereas Bowen and Soufal were on kind of tenterhooks throughout the second half. And there was a point in the second half where Bowen almost looked like he was going to get a second yellow card, but thankfully it didn't happen. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting for a minute that Michael Oliver lost us the game. In the second half, Arsenal completely dismantled us. There's no denying it. They were a far, far better team, far more organised, and they deserved their win, even though I hate to admit it. Next up is a big learning, I hope, for David Moyes. Well, if he hasn't learnt it already, if you're good enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and that's basically about the players that started for Arsenal in this game. They had 77% possession and were bright in attack and comfortable in defence. Even when they went a goal down, they didn't look like a team that looked like they were going to be beaten. They were well drilled. It's a well drilled young Arsenal side who played with freedom and no fear. They were steady, comfortable, and totally in control. The average age of the Arsenal team, of the Arsenal starting 11, was 24, with three of their players at the age of 21. The only elderly players that they had in their lineup was Partey and Xhaka, 29 and 30 respectively, who were the central holding midfielders. Now, clever play by Mikel Arteta. He's got a youthful, energetic, mobile team in defence and in attack, and they glue it all together with two very experienced midfielders who can not only protect the back line but could also help set up attack as well. When looking at the Arsenal team on Monday night, I felt a touch of envy, to be honest with you, especially with when I reviewed our starting lineup. Five of our players, almost half the team, are in their 30s. Fabianski, Dawson, Creswell, Soufal, and Antonio. The youngest player we had on the pitch when we started was Declan Rice. We looked laboured, bereft of ideas, no energy, no pace. And it was such a difference seeing such a young Arsenal side going about their business, and then us really, really laboured. And the minute we conceded the equaliser, I didn't see the team that we saw last season, where when West Ham went a goal down or a team equalised against us, we just picked ourselves up and just started again. We're not having any of that at the moment this season, I'm afraid. It seems that the minute we lose a goal, it's like it was about 3 years ago. The minute we lost a goal, our heads went down, and that really is a massive concern. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not just blaming the over 30s for our defeat. I think it was a poor performance across the whole team, to be quite honest with you. But with an Arsenal side full of vigour, age is going to be a factor, and they sort of demonstrated that as well. We bought 8 players in the summer transfer window to improve our squad. Yet 3 are still out injured, and I guess that can't be helped. Injuries are injuries, as frustrating as they are. And another 3 were on the bench. Now, could we have done any better if we had some of our new players? I'm going to include Areola in that. Areola, Downs, and Emerson in the starting lineup. Well, certainly they would have been 3 younger players who would have replaced probably Fabianski, Creswell, and Soucek in midfield. And maybe we would have played with Emerson on the pitch, a different formation, maybe a wing-back system. But at least we would have had more pace down the flanks with Emerson. We would have probably had better ball distribution from the goalkeeper, because Areola, as you know, I keep saying, is a much better ball distributor and equally a good shot stopper as Fabianski is. And we may have had a little bit more bite and tenacity in midfield with Downs in there. It's great that we brought Divine and Barmer on, but to make his Premier League debut and which is fully deserved, and only be given 3 minutes is a bit of an insult to the young man himself. And then we go on to our defence, and I've mentioned this several times before, and again during our mid-season friendlies. The West Ham defence is just nowhere near as solid as it once was. We're leaking goals left, right, and centre, conceding really, really soft goals. And we're even getting out muscled now by opposition as well. All 3 Arsenal goals were more of a result of such poor defending from us. Yes, their build-up play was good. Let's not deny it. Let's not take anything away from Arsenal here. But we were sloppy in defence. Their first goal, bad control by Declan Rice. I know David Moyes said he had a bad pass to him by Ben Rama. I'm not buying that. I'm sorry, but Declan Rice was culpable. He lost control of the ball, and then he seemed quite a bit lackluster to sort of get back to close Odegaard down. I mean, there was something like 2 or 3 of our players around him. No one seemed really that interested in closing the player down before he had his shot. Okay, the shot was lucky. It fell to the feet of Bukayo Saka, and he slotted it in. It was unfortunate in regards to that was a shot on target, and it fell to Saka in the manner that it did. But nonetheless, I think we were sloppy in allowing Odegaard to first win the ball, and then secondly being allowed to take a shot anyway. Their second goal was just as disastrous, wasn't it? Soufal not closing down Martinelli enough, and then for an experienced keeper like Fabianski to be caught by his near side post was really amateurish. And then the third goal, I mean, equally as embarrassing. And Ketia turning Tilo Kehrer so easily for their third goal. Look, I tried to qualify it, with my mates. I said, well, Kehrer shouldn't be playing on the left side of central defence. And in fact, he shouldn't have done. But still, he was too easily turned for my liking. And then lastly, and sadly, nothing much seems to have changed, or nothing much has changed at all. I said the things that could make me change my thinking on David Moyes as our manager was that if we were still down at the bottom of the league when the World Cup break arrived, and if we didn't see any change when the World Cup was over, in the manner that we played. And to be honest, we're still down there. And the way we played is probably still not much different to what it was before the World Cup break. I said that I was still backing Moyes. He's still our manager. And until he's not, what else can you do? We can shout and scream, and we've all got our views on that. But I think I was hoping that David Moyes would have taken note of some of the things that were happening throughout the World Cup with some of our players, and maybe have a good think about what he was doing with West Ham United as a team. Look, maybe there were one or two slight changes. You could see that David Moyes was trying to utilize Paqueta in a slightly deeper role. In fact, the Brazilian and Soucek seemed to kind of take it in turns alongside Declan Rice. If one went forward, the other one sort of held back a little bit and so on. But that didn't really work in total. We, again, like I said earlier on, we only played one half. Rather than it usually being the second half. This time it was the first half that we played slightly better. But it's not good enough. We need to play better in the whole 90 minutes and not think a half a game is enough. There were certain players who simply just not shown up for West Ham this season. And we needed to have, and they need to have their places challenged. Players such as Soufal, Soucek, Bowen, Antonio, you can go on. All these players started on Monday nights, and I think they need to be made to feel that they don't have an automatic starting place in the 11. Antonio, as I said, came out earlier in the week and talked about how upset he was at not starting more games. But he didn't really show much to prove that he was worthy of his place. I think there are other players as well that started on Monday night that you could sort of question and say, well, hang on a minute. Now, to their credit, both Soufal and Bowen in the mid-season friendlies did look like they both kind of stepped up. And maybe I'm being unfair to them because Bowen did win us the penalty, and Soufal, all right, he showed too much respect to Martinelli for their second goal, but overall he didn't do too badly. But with regards to Soucek, there really are options for David Moyes to choose from, and he simply has to bite the bullet and drop him for the game against Brentford on Friday. Right, that's it from me. If you're new to the channel, do hit the subscribe and like button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. I'll be on maybe with a West Ham Weekly on Wednesday nights as a West Ham mid-weekly special. But otherwise, if you hit the like and subscribe button, you'll know when I'm next on. Thank you for watching. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you all soon.